I'm an illustrator, uh, storyteller, artist, whatever you kind of want to tag me as. My current big project that I've been working on is called Bork the Viking Pug, which is a comic book. It's a graphic novel that I'm releasing in weekly installments through Drip, and it's a first of its kind project. I'm always thinking from a story perspective, right? And so, what's the story that we're telling? What do we want people to feel when they see this? Those are the questions that I kind of always ask before I work on anything, honestly. And it's that storyteller at heart. And so, when Drip came to me and they were like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" Uh, it was obvious for me, right? Like I knew what I wanted to do with a channel, and once again, kind of thinking about, okay, like this new technology, it's gonna be a thing, whether I want it to be or not. I was to be honest, like one of the many artists who had like my own views of what NFTs were, and they were not super positive before I got involved in the space. And the change in my thinking was like, listen, if this thing is a thing and it's gonna be a thing, I have my options of I can be a part of it and be the person that is involved in making it happen, or I can just let it happen to me. So it's like I can do my own thing in it now and be part of it early, or in 10 years I can be forced to make NFTs anyway on somebody else's terms. So the biggest sort of digital marketplace for comics um, in Web 2 is Comixology, which is owned by Amazon, and you don't own those comics. They're owned by Amazon. They're not even owned by Amazon. They're just licensed by Amazon. So at any point, at any given time, Amazon can decide, hey, we are not licensed to distribute these comics anymore. So they're coming out of your library, even though you pay for it. Here's maybe a gift card or not, right? Like they've done that with Kindle. They've done that with movies. They've done it with music in the past. They've definitely done it with comics where they lose the right to the digital distribution, and well, that comes out of your app even though you own it, right? And to me, true ownership, true like on-chain ownership is a big part of what we're solving. Like, so that's what's exciting to me, is that this is all happening in the bear, right? Like we're
hmm
doing all this stuff right now, like deep in a bear market where sentiment is low, where 80% of people had left. They're off touching grass or whatever, right? Like, so we're kind of doing this as a small group of people, and I feel like when this spotlight comes back to us, it's gonna be a completely different world that people see. And that, to me, to be a part of that, even a small part of that, is super exciting.
Welcome to episode 10 of Into the Forest with Pine. Today I have Carlos, who is working on Bork. Let's start off by you introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, I'm Carlos. I go by 466 online, pretty much on everything. So I'm an illustrator, uh, storyteller, artist, whatever you kind of want to tag me as. My current big project that I've been working on is called Bork the Viking Pug, which is a comic book. It's a graphic novel that I'm releasing in weekly installments through Drip, and it's a first of its kind project. It's Solana's first on-chain comic book. Every NFT that we've released so far actually contains story pages, um, which is sort of an innovation. And it's been both a blessing and a curse in that, we're the first ones doing it, and it's been a lot of excitement about it, but also like there's no real support for the format yet. So it's been like a constant customer education journey, getting it out there to the world. But yeah, so Bork the Viking Pug is an adventure comic. It's a story about a little pug named Bork, and he's sort of this adventurer, warrior type guy. I kind of like to describe him as sort of a mix of like Jack Sparrow and SpongeBob SquarePants. Like just sort of um, this kind of just go, let's see where life takes you, kind of attitude, and like an optimist in every way, uh but also sort of like, with its own little dark side that we're going to be learning about as the story progresses. Um, so that's the comic, that's the story. It's been we're about 40 pages in. I think I just released page 38, 39 with yesterday's release. And we're at about 210,000 subscribers on Drip. And just, I mean, it's been an amazing journey so far. Like we've had a lot of momentum around the character, around the world. Um, you know, it's been super exciting to work on this.
Yeah, I've been following your work since you guys launched on Drip, and I think it's a really cool like new way to do things, and it's really kind of caught my attention. Kind of going back to I kind of just want to know like how did you kind of start your journey as a storyteller and artist? Like where did that come from?
Oh man, like so stories are what made me wanted to be want to be an artist to begin with. Like if I had to think about my genesis, I guess as an artist and as an illustrator, I always tell like my origin story being the Little Mermaid. Like being a little kid and somehow finding, it's like I feel like the old VHSs used to come with like the behind the scenes features,
Yeah.
like all the way when the movie ended. So it's like, it's like that there were no like DVD menus back then. And I guess one time as a kid, I watched the movie all the way through, and there was this sort of Easter egg of this featurette of the making of the Little Mermaid, and sort of that was like this big moment in my life where I discovered, oh, like there's artists who made this, right? It wasn't just like it's not a thing that just springs to life.
Yeah.
And I remember I have this really clear memory that I always kind of like to tell people about. Seeing them talk about the storm at the beginning of the movie and how that took them like 2 years to animate, right? And um, me being like 5 or 6 at the time or whatever, like I go to my grandma and I say, "Hey, grandma, I bet I could make that. I can animate a storm and even less than that, right?" And I go and I like, I get my little papers and I start like flipping the pages like I saw in the documentary, and I must have done like 4 drawings or something like that. Like, and I'm like, it's just like in the movie. Look, I have a whole storm, and it only took me like an hour or whatever, and I was so proud of myself. But the positive response that I got from that, and just as I started drawing more and getting into it, um, kind of stuck, and it made it so that it was the thing that I pursued, um, and then just so movies were always a part of it, right? Like I was really into movies basically my entire life, really into the process of movies, which is then what got me into stories themselves. Um, just really figuring out why I like the things I like. I like this movie and I like that movie. Why do I like them? Oh, well, there's these things happening in the story that, they share in common. And oh, it's these people that write and make these movies, and that's what these movies share in common. And as I got more into that part of it, I got more into storytelling, and it became clearer that it was something that I always wanted to pursue. So, um, about 10 years ago, when I was finally able to go full time freelance as an illustrator, one of the very first things I did was I self published a children's book. And that was kind of like my first big personal project as a storyteller. And so that DNA has always been, even though like my illustration career has very little to do with storytelling, that's always been the DNA behind my work as an artist. Is like, how do I find a way to like sneak a story into this or to tell a story with this project? And even when I'm doing something kind of boring and dull, like, like editorial, like, oh, here's a piece of news and I need you to do the graphic for that. I'm always thinking from a story perspective, right? And so, what's the story that we're telling? What do we want people to feel when they see this? Those are the questions that I kind of always ask before I work on anything, honestly. And is that storyteller at heart. And so, when Drip came to me and they were like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" Uh, it was obvious for me, right? Like I knew what I wanted to do with a channel. It was tell a story, and comics to me are kind of like the freest way to tell a story. It gives you everything. Like it gives you the writing, it gives you the visuals, It gives you an unlimited budget, so I don't have to worry about like, oh, I'm gonna write this really this ladybug that can kind of like go and go across time and recruit versions of herself to come and fight Bork. That's gonna cost a lot of money to do in a movie, but in a comic, it's just gonna cost me a lot of time, right? And so um, it's like a really cool little format. And when I think about, there's all this talk in Solana about IP this and IP that, like almost every valuable IP that we've had in the last 20, 30 years has come out of comics, right? And like stories are kind of where the characters that we love and the worlds that we love tend to spring from. And when I think about like world building and I think about characters and brands that people fall in love with, it always makes sense to me to start with a story. And everything else maybe will come, and if it doesn't, I'll still have a story that I told, and that'll be, that'll be fun too. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when Drip reached out to you, were you involved in the crypto space prior to that, or was this the first time you got involved with the crypto space?
I've been, I mean, I've been in Web3 since 2021. So I got into it funny enough because of I was doing a project for Universal Music. They reached out to me just before I was in Web3. They just reached out to me as an illustrator. They were thinking about doing this project for one of their artists, and they wanted to recruit me. And that project got me kind of looking into the space. I got into NBA Top Shot, and then right around that time, this was maybe July, August of 2021. I realized that one of my sort of friends in the art space, Justin Mazel, he was minting a project, and that's Grim Syndicate, which is sort of one of the OGs on Solana. And that became like a really easy way for me to kind of like transition into Web3 and like find a community that felt, like like a community that was approachable. Uh, I feel like culturally, there's a lot of stuff that I struggle with in Web3. But Grimm's kind of gave me a place. I was like real people talking in, like real English and stuff. And, not everything was like a wag me or whatever. It's like, it was funny because it was a more mature sort of community. Like a lot of the people were more like my age and that kind of thing. So like they weren't really playing a lot of those, Discord games, and that made it very approachable and very easy to sort of like see myself being a part of it. And to be honest, I've been sort of chasing that type of community ever since. There's not a lot of them like it in Web3, and um, but yeah, through that, I got really involved in Grims. I became part of the art team in the project. So like I did a lot of the support stuff, whether it was like designing like Grims for collaborations, or like I helped with the creation of the full body Grim model. So that was actually something that we did so that we could collaborate with like metaverse projects and games and things like that. So like we were able to design that and get a 3D Grim built that they could send out to projects and stuff. I did some lore art. I We were about to launch actually a PFP collection that I had designed that was going to be a collaboration with Famous Foxes, and then I think like the bear hit, and that all that kind of stuff kind of like went by the wayside. I think I auctioned a couple of them off like a few months ago, um, but yeah, no, I mean that was my kind of like initial experience with Web3 and with Solana. And Solana always made sense. I mean, I was never into the idea of like paying like $3,000 in tax,
Yeah.
basically for just to mint an NFT. Like that was also like way expensive. Um, so Solana always made sense to me, and once again, kind of thinking about, okay, like this is this new technology. it's gonna be a thing whether I want it to be or not. I was to be honest like one of the many artists who had like my own views of what NFTs were, and they were not super positive before I got involved in the space. And the change in my thinking was like, listen, if this thing is a thing and it's gonna be a thing, I have my options of I can be a part of it and be the person that is involved in making it happen, or I can just let it happen to me. So it's like I can do my own thing in it now and be part of it early, or in 10 years I can be forced to make NFTs anyway on somebody else's terms. And once I changed my thinking in that regard, then I started thinking like, what do I want to do in this space? And story always kind of came back, right? Like even at Grimm's, I would always pitch like, let me do a lore comic. Like let's do like lore drops that are comics to the community, like to sort of build up the lore and all that kind of stuff. And it never really quite coalesced. So when cNFTs came along and it became like really like easy and possible to like get collectibles out to the masses, um, that was like the perfect timing because I was also already sort of like in the place where I was doing like really cheap like open editions, like I was already kind of thinking like I want my stuff to be accessible. I'm not trying to be the exclusive guy. I don't need my stuff to sell for 100 SOL, for a one-on-one. Like I don't need that kind of pressure of like, oh, you spent 100 SOL and now you want to be able to sell it for 1,000 SOL down the line. It's like, no, thank you. Like I want to give you my art. If you enjoy it, you can have it, and that's honestly like all I care about. Um, and so yeah, like Drake came along. I saw like the Solana, the DJ and Poet uh, channel opened up, and I think I've shared the screenshot of like me DMing him like I think like a week into him having that, being like, "Yo, when can I be a part of this? I want to do this." And um, it took some finagling and some lots of like hitting people up and trying to get like the connection to happen, but finally I was able to hook up with Vibu, and um, yeah, like that's the rest is history. We He asked me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "A comic," and he was like, "Okay," like so. And then the funny part is like I think he thought when I said a comic, he thought I was wanting to do the little one pagers, like the little like just here's one graphic with like 3 panels, and that's a comic, right? And that's what I was gonna do every week. And like the first drop comes along, and I send him like multiple pages, and he's like, what is this? I don't know how to do this." So like we literally did create like just like a brand new format, where all the pages are in the metadata, and we built it in a way that is composable. So hopefully, as more people start doing these comics, more platforms will be able to support them, and they'll be able to sort of integrate them, like just take the content and integrate them into whatever experience they want, rather than it be an HTML or something like that, and us dictating what the experience looks like. So.
Yeah. So how have like NFTs and especially the drip style of dropping mass cNFTs kind of changed the way you engage with your fans? Because I feel like it must be pretty different from how it was previously.
Um, Man, so I'm like one of those people that I'm pretty sure I have like undiagnosed like ADHD, and the biggest change pre and post drip is that my phone is just going crazy like all the time, right? Like it's like a huge spotlight on you. It's like this t-shirt cannon where it's like suddenly way more people are aware of who you are, and um there's more people like trying to get your attention, whether it's for like asking about drip and like, oh, I'm interested in doing it too, or hey, what can we do with Borg and this project, or can you do a collaborate? And it's like it's just a constant thing, and that's been like the biggest struggle for me. Is like figuring out how to funnel all that attention and like prioritize and my days while still also having to do a weekly comic, which is like that's the cherry on top. It's like, oh, like I'm having to learn how to like communicate with way more people while at the same time having like the biggest like artistic commitment like of my life. Like um so but it's been super fun. I mean, the engagement has been off the charts um across different platforms. So it's like I'm on Dialect and we have a community there and they're pretty engaged. I'm on Solarplex now, and even that has been really cool. Like, and everywhere it's been really interesting because like for a while, like as a joke, I changed my Twitter display name to Bork66 instead of 466, and then people just started calling me Bork, and I'm like, all right, I gotta change it back because I'm not Bork. Bork is my creation, like But even just the fact that people were calling me that was really cool because it's like, oh, like people know what this is, and as an artist, I mean, we do our stuff so we could share it with people, like, right? Like, art to me is about touching someone and it's communication and it's empathy, right? Like, it's this idea of like, if I feel this, then somebody else out there has to feel it too, and that's the ultimate form of success as an artist is when you create a thing and you put yourself into it and then other people see themselves in it too. It's like, oh wow, like that's like a true moment, right? And seeing so many people like send me notes like, hey, like these comics remind me of like reading comics with my dad when I was a kid, or hey, Bork reminds me of this series that I really love, and man, like you got me on the edge of my seat with this last drop. Like, what's gonna happen next? I can't wait to get it next week. Like that, those kind of notes are just what keep me going, honestly. And that's been the biggest change is that what I did before was mostly for the like even like outside of Web3 as an illustrator, my work was for the benefit of art directors, right? Like my entire online presence, the type of work that I was doing, it was like only for the benefit of like having someone who has a budget to come and reach out to me and say, hey, we want you to come and do this work for us. And so there was that connection missing of like having your work actually like speak to an audience and then having that audience directly engaged to you, because mostly it was like I would do the work, I would send it to a client of some kind, and they would shoot it out into the world, and then that would be completely disconnected from me, right? um Whereas this is really just very much like my work is connected to me and the audience is directly connected to myself and to the work. And so there's a constant feedback loop of like, I know how people feel about it in real time. I get to talk about like the experience that they're having, and it's influencing its creation as well, right? Like as I introduce new ideas or new characters, new parts of the story, I get this instant feedback now where um, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll give this character more pages next time, right? Like maybe people are interested in learning more about this person or that character or seeing this part of the world, or hey, they're not understanding this, maybe I need to explain this in the next comic. It's this very collaborative process that is new to me, and it's honestly like very exciting and creatively challenging. um and it's honestly only possible through this format, through drip, because even in traditional comics, you work on a comic, you send it off to a publisher, it gets printed, it gets sent out to a comic book shop, and people basically are getting the comic maybe like 2 months after you made it, and only then will you get the feedback. By that point, you're 2, 3 issues, deep into like, whatever it is that you're doing, and so it's like this sort of instant feedback on a story has been really, really fun and challenging because you have this sort of like big idea of where you want to go with it. Um, but you also have this short term feedback coming in. And so it's like, well, I'm still want to go where I want to go, but maybe the way there is changing as I kind of see what people are responding to or not responding to, understanding, not understanding, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, I feel like crypto really gives you the opportunity to kind of build in public and let people give you feedback constantly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's what building public is, but for like a creative project, right? Like
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing. Like, you know, I feel like more people should do that. It will be
yeah,
really fun.
definitely.
Yeah.
So, if there's like artists out there who are thinking, because initially you said you were pretty like apprehensive about joining, like creating NFTs, and you kind of didn't have a great view on it. So, like, how do you kind of see NFTs, and if like there's artists who are thinking about it, like, what advice would you have for them?
Um, I would I would try to disconnect the culture from the technology. I think when people outside of crypto and outside of Web3 um, think about why they don't want to be in NFTs, they're thinking about the culture. They're not really thinking about the technology, right? And so a culture cannot be changed. Technology is a tool, right? And so technology doesn't have to be the thing that it's always been, right? Like everybody thought that Instagram was one thing until it became this other thing, right? Like everybody thought that social media was just your top eight and posting status updates, and then it became this whole huge, thing. And it's what you do and sort of how you innovate on the technology that creates different parts of that culture. And I think what I would say to someone outside of Web3 and what I would say to artists, especially, is that if you don't like what people are doing with the technology now, then come in and change it, do something different, you know? Because the reason that things are the way they are right now is because only one subset of people had the foresight or the excitement about the core technology to come in and do stuff here. And that happened to be people who were already into trading and people who were already into like tech as a thing. And um, artists have been a lot slower to adopt what we're doing here. And I think we desperately need people who are thinking like about consumers and people who are thinking about like how can I make like delightful experiences with crypto, and how can I build something long lasting with crypto? Um, how can I figure out what the benefits are of crypto other than just like raising a lot of money in a short period of time, which I feel like it's honestly like how people see it, right? Like this is the only thing that you can go do. It's like, well, you can go and mint a thing and make $2 million overnight and then disappear, right?
Yeah,
Uh, And to me, it's like there's so much more to that, right? When I think about doing comics on crypto actually solves a lot of problems with the industry as it exists right now. Um, ownership is a big part of it, right? So the biggest sort of digital marketplace for comics um, in Web2 is Comixology, which is owned by Amazon, and you don't own those comics. They're owned by Amazon. They're not even owned by Amazon. They're just licensed by Amazon. So at any point, at any given time, Amazon can decide, hey, we are not licensed to distribute these comics anymore. So they're coming out of your library, even though you pay for it. Here's maybe a gift card or not, right? Like they've done that with Kindle. They've done that with movies. They've done it with music in the past. They've definitely done it with comics where they lose the right to the digital distribution, and well, that comes out of your app, even though you own it, right? And to me, true ownership, true like on-chain ownership, is a big part of what we're solving. You know, as a person who's been sort of like online and that kind of thing for a long time, I think about like my LimeWire days and all that kind of stuff, like where like finding like a really rare track from an artist, right? And having that be stuck in my old compact Presario that doesn't exist anymore, right? Like if that was on chain, I would always have that, right? And um, that kind of thing like really is a solve. And I feel like if we find the right way to pitch that to artists and to audiences, um, it would make a huge difference. I think the other part of that is immutability, right? So when you have one of my comics, I can't change that like retroactively, right? And um, I think as a Star Wars fan, I've experienced that with like George Lucas, right? Like giving you the special editions and deciding, well, maybe Han didn't shoot first, and fuck you. Like, I get to decide that now, right? Like, and to me, it's like as an artist, I understand how that feels like as a creator to like look at my old work and say, "Ugh, I want to do that different. I want to change that." But that's not the comic that you fell in love with. That's not the work that you as a reader or as a viewer fell in love with. And for me to go and reach into your collection and say, well, this is going to be different now, that doesn't vibe with me, right? And so that is like another way in which we are creating a new experience for fans. um, and then as far as monetization, having, on-chain royalties, having a way for people to like not only get rewarded for their support of an artist earlier on, right? So like the people who have these comics now, they're getting these rares. If for whatever reason, like if I do what I'm supposed to do as an artist and as a business owner, and I make this really big in 5, 10 years, and Bork is this big international brand, well, now you own and you have a way to prove that you own this, genesis, these first, the beginning of this experience. And I think that having that be on chain versus in an attic somewhere getting wet and is amazing because it's like, well, like as long as you have self custody and you are keeping that somewhere, it's not dependent on me, it's not dependent on the weather. Like you own it and you own it forever, and you know your children will own it. Like it'll be this really cool thing where as artists come in and decide to build for the long haul and to build these long-term brands and characters and worlds, um, we we will get more of that, right? We will get those benefits, not just to the artist but to their audience.
Yeah, totally. So you've had like a long career in kind of illustration and a less long career in kind of storytelling. Like what, like have lessons have you learned along the way of doing Bork, like different from the lessons you've learned in your normal career?
Man, the lessons are, the lessons are honestly that I to trust myself. Um, like I said, when you're creating for when you're doing client work, you spend so much time trying to get into like what is something that's sellable and what is something that a client is going to want. How can I make myself and fit into this box that is marketable, right? Um, Bork is punk rock, man. Like it's like I'm just doing the thing and it's whatever I want it to be. I don't have an editor. I mean, my wife copy edits me because I make a lot of typos, but I don't have like a story editor. I don't have someone telling me like you can't tell this story. That's not gonna, our research shows that nobody's gonna like this character or whatever it might be, right? Like it doesn't fit the publishing trends right now. Like I'm just telling my story, and I think honestly, like what's really cool about this space right now as a storyteller is that we get to do that. We get to tell new stories. We don't have to market fit our stories. We don't have to market fit our products. I mean, if you want to go and like get like $1 million from Soul Big Brain, yeah, you do. But if you just want to create, this is amazing. This is like a great place to do that. You want to just do the thing that nobody else is going to allow you to do, go do it. Like that's what Web3 is offering right now that um, very few places are offering, right? And I think there's a trend of creators who understand that creating for yourself and then finding people who vibe with that um, is the way. This idea of trying to be everything to everybody, like that just doesn't exist anymore. Like I think we've seen our last like I think Taylor Swift and Beyonce are gonna be the last Taylor Swift and Beyonces. You know what I mean? Like the future is much more niche because now you can sort of like be really big within just your particular part of the world, and you don't really need to be huge for everybody to make a living as an artist. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Web3 enables that in a beautiful way.
So I guess switching notes a little bit, what's like kind of exciting you going forward? Like what has you excited? And yeah,
What has me about
yeah,
what
just about like what you're working on and kind of like what, yeah.
man honestly, like what excites me is the story that I'm telling. It's not going where a lot of people think it's going. It's not the story that a lot of people think it is. um and so it's been really hard to be patient and to say, okay, like, yeah, I want to get there, but like this is what I got to do right now. And that keeps me excited, honestly, like knowing where it's going, knowing what I want to do with the story down the line, has been super exciting. And creating challenges for myself, like, even though I know sort of like the what on a long enough timeline what the story is, I'm writing myself into like corners almost every week, right? Like I try to end the comic in a place where it's like, okay, I need to get him out of here, or I need to get these characters to where they need to be. But first, I'm gonna make it really hard for me to do that, and um, that's been a super exciting. I mean, it's just pure creation, honestly. Like, um, and I think as a whole, I'm really excited to be on Solana right now. I think that there's a whole generation of like creators and founders on Solana that understand that the old way of doing things is dead, right? Like we are building a new way. Like if we ever want to have that mass adoption event, um, then we need to, like grow up a little bit and like really start thinking about how can we be more appealing to people who don't care about, you know, like the philosophy of Bitcoin and crypto and all that kind of stuff. Like, how can we just build a product that people want, right? And whether that's stories or movies or animation or music, there's a lot of people right now trying to make that happen. And then there's a lot of developers who are also on board with that idea and are building the infrastructure for us to be able to do it. So, you know, like Bork as a comic is something that I'm doing on my own, but it's enabled by the work of all these people, you know, obviously Drip itself, the team at Dialect has been super supportive. We have Carol, we have, like, I mean, I could go down the list of people who have come in and offer their support to do new technology. The team um, at Tiplink, you know, they gave me a whole work through on like this is how it works and this and that. And now like for the website, when I'm working on a standalone website for Bork, I'm like, yeah, like that's the way we're gonna do it. This is how we do a comic that where Solana is powering the experience, but it doesn't have to be front and center. There's not going to be a mint button anywhere. It's just going to be a buy button if you want to buy the comic or if you want to subscribe. But you're getting an NFT, and it's just going to be on your Google account, and then we're going to let you ease into the idea that you now own a bunch of NFTs, right? Um, and I think that kind of thing is like really interesting to me because it means that we're building a way to give people all these benefits and letting them experience the benefits before they have to be sold on the idea of crypto or web3. It's like, no, just like build those benefits into a product that is easy to use and easy to access, and then let people experience it. And then you don't have to sell crypto. They'll just know like, oh, like this is a cool experience, right? Like, so that's what's exciting to me is that this is all happening in the bear, right? Like we're
Hmm.
doing all this stuff right now, like deep in a bear market where sentiment is low, where 80% of people had left, they're off touching grass or whatever, right? Like, so we're kind of doing this as a small group of people, and I feel like when this spotlight comes back to us, it's gonna be a completely different world that people see. And that to me, to be a part of that, even a small part of that, is super exciting. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to end things off. Thank you for coming on to Into the Forest with Pine.
yeah, man, for sure. It's a pleasure talking to you.